Today, the leader of U.S. Cyber Command said he has yet to receive an order from the president to disrupt Russian hacking operations where they originate.
Is Russia attempting to achieve a strategic objective by influence U.S. public opinion on elections?
Yes, sir. I believe they're attempting to undermine our institutions.
Now, aside from our intelligence agencies operating under a presidential funding, are there any other organizations other than the Cyber Command Cyber Mission Forces that have the authority and capability to disrupt Russian election hacking operations where they originate? Does the FBI, DHS, or the states, the private sector have such authorities or capabilities?
You could argue probably only again, there's a legal aspect to this that I'm not the most qualified, but probably you'd argue some combination of DOD, DOJ have the standing authority in that regard.
But the mission teams, particularly at the origin of these attacks, have the authority to do so.
If granted the authority, and I don't have the day-to-day authority to do that, if granted the authority.
So you would need basically to be directed by the President through the Secretary of Defense?
Yes, sir. In fact, I mentioned that in my statement.
Have you been directed to do so, given the strategic threat that faces the United States and the significant consequences you recognize already?
No, I have not, but if I could flesh this out, I'll say something in an open unclassified. I'd be glad to go into more details.
Yes,
in a classified. Based on the authority that I have as a commander, I have directed the National Mission Force to begin some specific work. I'd rather not publicly go into that,
Right.
using the authorities that I retain as a commander in this mission space.
So as inherent ability of a commander to prepare, plan,
Yes, sir.
and structure, but you need the direct authority of the President through the Secretary of Defense
To do some specific things.
some specific authority.
There are some things I have the authority, and I am acting within that authority now.
All right, well, here was the White House response just moments ago.
But Admiral Rogers is the one that would have the agency that could actually go and confront Russian intrusion at the source, and he hasn't been given the authority. In fact, he says that the Russians haven't paid a sufficient price to make them change their behavior. He's the one with the power, with the means to do it. All he needs is a presidential directive, the authority from the
I
president to
disagree
do
with
it.
the premise of your question. It's not just one individual. It's looking at a number of different ways.
He's in charge of Cyber Command. Why not give him the authority?
Nobody is denying him the authority. We're looking at a number of different ways that we can put pressure. Look, this president, as I told you last week, has been much tougher on Russia than his predecessor. Let's not forget that this happened under Obama. It didn't happen under President Trump. If you want to blame somebody on past problems, then you need to look at the Obama administration.
This is not about the past, though. This is not about the past. It's about protecting intrusion in the next election.
Exactly,
And he
and
says
that's-
he needs the authority, and he hasn't been given it. He
Well,
says he
I can't
ask about
speak
the
to that
authority.
specifically. I can tell you that we are taking a number of steps to prevent this, and we're looking at a variety of other ways that we're going to continue to implement over the coming weeks and months.
Joining me now, Kim Whaley, who served as Associate Independent Counsel in the Whitewater investigation of President Clinton. Also here, CNN Chief Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin. All right, this was interesting to listen to Sarah Sanders talk about this, because she went from the president is not denying the authority to the NSA chief, to it happened during the Obama administration, even though it's ongoing, to she doesn't want to get ahead of the president when she's talking about what's going to be done on Russian meddling. Let's start with the beginning. She said that he is not denying the authority, Jeffrey, to the NSA director. That's not what we heard today on the Hill from him, though.
Well, not at all. And look, anyone who's been paying the slightest bit of attention has known that for more than a year, President Trump has been downplaying Russian influence in the election, has been saying that it may not even have taken place at all. Now, apparently, he acknowledges it took place. But the idea that his administration is committed to stopping it is pretty laughable, because he's done nothing on that score.
And he's also said that what Russia is, what has been done from the U.S. to retaliate is not sufficient to prevent Russia basically from continuing on this path, Jeffrey.
Right, which means it could be going on as we speak. And, you know, there was tremendous Russian effort that we know of in 2016. All the intelligence agencies have said they expect this to continue. And it's apparent, it's very likely to continue. It's very likely that it's continuing as we speak.
Kim, what do you think about this as you try to square what you're hearing from the NSA director, who's known very much as a straight shooter, and then what you're hearing from the White House?
Well, I think it's actually quite frightening, and I would recommend everyone actually read the indictment setting forth the the facts relating to the Russian influence in our election that the Mueller probe handed down. Because people talk about fake news, what to believe. People can go to the source documents and read it. We were attacked, essentially. Our democratic system was attacked. So the question isn't, is this going to happen? It happened. And it's probably going to happen again. And so then the question is, how are we going to stop the bleeding? Who's going to stop the bleeding? And it sounds like the president isn't. It sounds like this particular Congress and the Republican control is not really rigorous in terms of doing anything about this. And so it's something I think we all as Americans need to be very, very concerned about.
And that Mueller indictment of the 13 Russians was only part of the Russian effort. It dealt only with the social media side of things, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It didn't even talk about the theft of the emails, the DNC emails, the John Podesta emails. That's a whole other part of the Russian involvement in this campaign, and Mueller hasn't even addressed that yet.
And Kim, the president referred to this as a witch hunt again. It was someone from your perspective who's participated in an independent counsel, especially when you consider that indictment was targeting, at least this one part of it, what Russian involvement specifically was. It wasn't about the Trump campaign. That was sort of left for another time. This was about Russian involvement.
Yeah, I mean, the witch hunt is fake news at this point. That sort of mantra is just false. And it was something that we did here in the Whitewater investigation. And listen, prosecutors prosecute, right? They look at facts and they look at the law and they identify if there was a violation of the law. And if there wasn't, they move on. And I think that is a system that we should all uphold and respect here. And this witch hunt lie essentially really is, I think, been debunked by what's been coming out of the Mueller investigation. A witch hunt suggests it's purely political. That's not the case here.